Hi, I am doing a live again on Monday, May 18th. I think it's the 18th. And I'm talking about doing life at home. I'll start off with answering two questions that were asked me. One was, what's in the slow cooker? And that is a beef roast and onions. And I dumped thyme over the top of it and garlic powder. And what are we having with it? I have some potatoes that need used up, so I'm going to boil those. They're small red ones. I'm just going to boil them and we'll put butter on them. And there are frozen vegetables in the the freezer. And so I'm going to roast those. So that's the supper plan. Another question was, I forget now. It was about, I was going to talk about grocery shopping again. The other question was about, the sweet potato starch. That looks so pathetic. When I came, I don't know if you saw it in the stories, but the sweet potato starch that finally came in the mail looked like they'd been dried up. They were dehydrated so badly. I put them in a glass of water, and today they're actually looking good. They perked up. So we'll see how many live. The weather is it rained a lot yesterday and overnight, and I can't work in a garden anyway, and I'm cleaning my laundry room, which is a complete mess. So as soon as it gets nice out, I'll probably put the sweet potatoes out and finish planting garden. So Town Day. I was asked some questions about Town Day. I talked about it on Friday. I think it was Friday that I talked about how we did Town Day, and how I had store rules for the children, and they were required to obey the store rules, and that was the expectation. We went over the rules before leaving the house, like at breakfast time or sometime in the morning. We talk about what are the store rules, and they were supposed to repeat them. They can still repeat the store rules. They're as adults. And then in the car before each stop, I would review the store rules with them again. And it was simple, like 5. I want to say there weren't more than 5, which were no running, no jumping, no climbing, that kind of thing. No wrestling. That was always a big one. No wrestling. Do not touch each other. No yelling, no screaming, no crying. And they were supposed to follow behind me. I would put the car seat and a toddler in the cart, whatever made sense with the age of the kid. And then they were supposed to walk in age order behind me, like ducks in a row. Littlest one close to me and the oldest one at the end. And then any children who were not behaving, they had to hold on to the cart, so I could see them with my eyes and see that they were holding on the cart and not wandering around. And the kids will tell you that was typically Brooke and Brian. Brooke and Brian were the closest thing probably that I came to with twins. They are 18 months apart, and Brooke was on the small side and Brian was on the big side. So if they were in a double stroller, people thought they were twins. And I'm talking about when they're like toddlers, preschoolers. If one was getting into something, the other one was right there beside him. They were best friends and worst enemies. Those were the children that also spent a lot of time holding on to the cart, one on each side. So we were kind of a train. I always chose to go in the morning because the stores are more empty in the morning. Typically it was other elderly people, retired people, and stay-at-home moms that you see in the stores in the morning. The earlier you go, the better. Ideally was to get home before lunchtime, because then we could eat lunch at home and put people down for naps. That's what I preferred to do. Didn't always work out that way, but that was how I did it when I had a lot of little children at home. Once the kids got older and I had someone old enough to be a babysitter, then I would leave a younger kid home with the older. So Brant was the oldest. Once he was about 13, 14, then I would leave 1 or 2 children home with him and take people with me. Also depended on the age of the kids, and their personalities and who was acting up. Because if I had one that was acting up, that child had to go with me to the store. That because everyone else was doing their thing, and when they're in their home living their daily life and they have this routine that they go through during the day, they'll just stick with it. They do that. None of them really, they could probably tell me stories after the fact now. I've heard some, but typically it was when they got older, way older. When they were little children and I left them with like junior high, teenage kids that were older, they tended not to do anything crazy, get into trouble. And then also how I handled the older children monitoring the younger ones was they were to write down if someone did something that was a rule that they broke, or they were trying to take advantage of a situation, or they were being unpleasant. They were to write down what happened, and then I dealt with that child when I got home. That didn't really happen. It was not ever a big deal during the day. We actually had more problems with children not behaving or being pleasant with each other, fighting, that kind of thing, in the evening. If my husband and I went somewhere and left the kids or left some of the kids, then we would come home to bad stuff happen. Nothing ever really terribly bad, but the kids could probably tell me stories too. I don't know. They'll come out. They eventually do. The stories do. Sometimes I already knew the story. Mom knows. Sometimes I'm surprised. And that's always interesting. Not like horrifyingly surprised, but yeah, that happened. So back to town. As far as shopping for meals, this was part of the question. I especially back then, I had a pantry list that were things that and now I hope my mouth matches with my face because it got interrupted. The meals, I was talking about meals, and menu planning in a full pantry, stock pantry. So there are things that I like as far as meals that are regulars at our house. I like to have those ingredients on hand all the time. I learned that from my mother. And if I run out of something, then it goes on the list of things that I have to replace it with. If it's getting low, let's say I'm buying chicken broth and I see there's only a couple left. Well, I'm going to buy a lot of chicken broth next time I'm at the store if I'm buying chicken broth. Whatever the item is. I saved the weekly shopping for produce, dairy products, those type of things that fit with my meal. If I was making a meal that called for fire roasted peppers or something like that, that's not something I typically have in my pantry. So that would go on the weekly list, and a lot of times those short trips were to our local grocery store in our little rural town. The big pantry stocking trip happened once a month, where I would go to like Costco, Walmart. Back in the day, we didn't have a Costco, and I'd have to drive to another city to do a Sam's Club trip. That one was further away, so I didn't do that very often. Probably once a quarter, I would go to Sam's Club and do a big stock up. Once we got Costco, then it's more once a month. I go to Costco and stock up, get the toilet paper, get the paper towels, get the Ziploc bags, get the, the things that I like to have in my pantry. If you have a menu planning is so crucial. If you have a menu plan and you have the grocery lists that go with that menu, then it makes grocery shopping so much easier. I have always tried to keep things simple and use similar ingredients amongst the food that we eat, and probably part of that is just what I have access to as far as foods we grow. or the way I ate growing up, the way that my husband ate growing up, and just combining that, there are key ingredients that go into a lot of foods that we eat, and those go in our pantry. I do like to cook, and I love the cooking magazines, and I love cookbooks. I have way too many cookbooks, and I like to just read cookbooks, and I like to scroll Pinterest and look at recipes, and I like to make food. So that's fun for me. It's like a hobby that is necessary. I mean, you can just keep things simple, and I've done that in busy times in life where it's just a simple menu, 30 days worth of meals that we all like, everyone in the house likes pretty much. And that is a simple way of living. There is nothing wrong with that. But if you like to be creative, then you can have the ingredients for those tried and true, home style, whatever, comfort food meals in your pantry. And then you can get creative when you feel like it and get those ingredients on your weekly trip. That's how I did it. And that, perspective is also part of it. When you're buying food for 2 people or 4 people or 6 people, the size of things and the amount of food you need changes. And the more your family gets larger, everything multiplies, and then you start thinking outside the box of this menu. This food feeds 4 to 6 people. Well, I need it to feed 8 to 12 people. That kind of thing. And if I want to have leftovers, because I will deliberately make food so that we have leftovers to eat for our lunch in the next couple days of lunches, or even a supper. Sometimes in the evening we will have a meal of all the leftovers. Lay it out like a buffet, eat it up. This is supper, guys. If you don't like it, make yourself a peanut butter sandwich or a quesadilla. This is supper. All these leftovers. What was I saying before that? I need a person here with me. Annie. Something about recipes and how I like to cook. But it's okay to not have the same, or to not be creative. But if you want to be creative, you add that to your weekly list. Oh well, maybe I'll just turn into another video about town day and menu planning and that kind of thing tomorrow. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you found some value in this. If you have people in your life who are at home and not accustomed to being home and they're struggling, send them to homeplainandsimple.com and tell them about the ebook. It is short. It can be downloaded. It is an easy to read format. It can be on your phone, your device. You have, I think, 2 days to download it to anything, and it's the price of a cup of coffee. So if you have people who are struggling with doing life at home or not used to it, send them there to get that book. And yeah, that's all for today. Thank you for joining.